hit the button. Video time. Yay. And I think, yes, could it be? Yeah, cigarette. It's really good. It's been a very pleasant day. You know, this really does help. Anyway, yeah, so that's a whole subject in itself, right? This whole addiction thing and cigarettes, nicotine, the nature of this compound, and you know how it has controlled my destiny and my life in so many little ways. You know, not controlled, influenced, affected. You know, it'd be interesting to see how it would have turned out if I never did this. It'd be interesting, no doubt. It'd be all those things would always be interesting, right? You could just spend your whole life just saying, "Wow, if I just changed one little thing, and just how it has this profoundly big change." So that's sort of a subject, you know, that our our personality, our identity, is such a fragile thing. It's made out of so many little influences, little subtle things that develop us, change us. You know, a modern mystic just popped into my head just because, you know, he's, of all the YouTube personalities, I'd say that he has, it's the change, I would say, that's the most, the one I can see. There's lots of people that have changed me, no doubt, and influenced my personality in ways I can't see, that have maybe had bigger changes on me, like my destiny. Right now I wouldn't be making this video if I never heard a video they made or something. But the modern mystic is one where I'd say that's the most one that's most overt, in the sense that he's challenged me. The line from As Good as It Gets, he's made me want to be a better communicator. He's made me aware of the necessity of communicating better, because I say to myself, well, look, if he's not understanding what I'm saying, I'm obviously not saying it right. You know, I'm saying it wrong if he ain't getting it. Or if he's getting the wrong message. If he's not seeing where that's coming from, or why I said it that way, or why I'm angry, or why this, or why, you know, then obviously there's something wrong that I haven't figured out, that there's you know, something. Well, anyway, so he's provoked thoughts. He's provoked programs and gears and wheels to turn that would not have turned if I hadn't encountered him. Now, lots of people have done this, like I said, but that was the one that came to mind. So I'm making this video. So this sort of relates to a Snake Plisskenus video. His most recent video, something about some secret or something, my darkest secret, or I don't know what the video was about. It was an incoherent pile of mush. But what I liked about it was it had this undercurrent, although being incoherent and in a way obviously dishonest. It had this undercurrent of some effort to say I'm human, and it's you know, there's value in this communicating, and I'm just trying to, you know, use the word empathy, and that's where it all went wrong in a sense, because his psychology is not really empathetic. It's analytical, and you can't disguise, you know, you shouldn't confuse analytical with empathy. The fact that you can analyze and understand is a little different than you truly or really manifesting some sort of sincere worry for someone. It's like I could see somebody could run up to me with a horrible disease, and I can be having two different reactions, right? I'd be having the reaction, is it catchy? You know, they got the bird flu or something. I can see the threat to me, and or I could just see the suffering of the individual. And sometimes our empathy isn't really empathy, it's fear. I would concede that much of my empathy isn't empathy. I wish it was, but it's more like fear. I see something and I say, fuck, because that's could be me, or it will be me in the future, or something like that. Some kind of scenario where I'm seeing it from a perspective that I'm seeing myself in that position. So the empathy isn't really empathy in the sense that it's constructed out of a self-interest or a perception of some portion of self-interest in what happens to other people. In that if it can happen to them, it can happen to me. And that's what bothers me. So I'm just saying that, so unlike his video, there's supposed to be some bit of honesty. I'm giving you a bit of honesty, is that I wish I was a better person, and that my empathy for people was more sincere, in the sense that I could really manifest a deep and a profound pain at somebody else's tragedy. And I don't say I don't do that. I do. There's times when my empathy is sincere. I'm just saying there's oftentimes a kind of empathy I'm a little ashamed of, and that I'm not being empathetic, I'm just being self-preservationist. And there are big differences. Anyway, that really isn't the point of this video either. But I just thought it was an interesting video in the sense that we're just people, and we should be able to communicate in some sort of honest and sincere way to make each other understand each other, so we can understand why somebody can perceive things so radically different, and why our hostility towards each other just probably is out of perspective, and that it's not real. We're hostile because of some other underlying piece of shit that's in the way. So anyway, so that sort of relates to this. There's this guy who posted some comment in one of my videos about some dumbass guy in his video on veganism, and he read up a very nice response to his original video that I had replied to from a couple of months ago or whatever. And he's done a recent video on the subject, and that recent video is just such a pile of crap. You know, griping about vegan gains or whatever his name is, some bodybuilder guy who's a vegan, who probably makes fine arguments in defense of veganism. I'm just saying it's just not my style of veganism, is to worry about this self-interest part. But I mean, it is part of the subject. I guess there's a point where I'm going to do that, maybe this year. Just in the sense, I am 55 years old, and, you know, outside of the liabilities I've had all my life, whether I was vegan or not vegan, you know, I'm in pretty good shape for somebody 55. And, you know, some of that, you know, obviously it's genetics, this, that, and the other thing, but I think some of that is because of the fact that I took all these pollutants out of my diet. And I don't even have a very good vegan diet. I don't have a very healthy one. But the fact is that the worst vegan diet is better than the best meat diet. And I think that's an argument that can be made. But anyway, that's a whole nother subject. It's not a whole nother subject because it's sort of on the subject of, you know, again, what are we arguing for, and why are we arguing for it? I don't really have much empathy for people, in the sense that I don't care whether they live longer or they live healthier, to some extent, like on a personal level, personally, emotionally, and especially people, generally speaking, just because most people are shitheads, in my opinion. You know, they're wrong on so many things. They're just evil, nasty, cruddy, gluttonous, stupid pigs. And eating meat is only one of their vices. You know, they have a lot more. So I don't give a fuck about these fuckers, you know. But the truth is, it's a fact that besides the benefit of not tormenting other sentient animals, they would do themselves a lot of good to migrate away from this toxic, stupid, bad habit. And it's just a bad habit. So, and it's, you know, food preferences are not quite the same as heroin addiction or nicotine addiction. You know, but that's another complex subject, right? The difference between a psychological addiction and a physical addiction. And so that's too much of a subtlety for these jarheads or morons or whatever you want to call the average person. They're too stupid to understand these distinctions. So there's no point in me even going into it. So I'll just skip that part. But anyway, I'm just going to post a link in the description to this page because it's a really good page. I was sort of dismissing the guy's comment because it was sort of irritating. Just in the sense that I had already mentioned the some guy video in another video and just pointed out, you know, his argument fails right from the beginning when he starts whining about making me feel guilty. Because you can't make somebody feel guilty. You just can't do it. Unless you're speaking some kind of truth that they understand to be a truth, you can't make me feel guilty. You just can't make me feel guilty unless I'm actually guilty. You really can't. Alright? I mean, I can't manifest the feeling of guilt unless I think what you're saying is actually correct. Then I can feel guilty. But if I know it's not correct, how the fuck could I possibly feel guilty? I couldn't. So, that is such a lame way to open your argument that you almost just say, I didn't watch the whole video, but it's like, I'm already dismissing you because your whine, your complaint is idiotic. Somebody imposed guilt on me? Fuck you. I mean, really, fuck you. That was just too stupid. You're telling me you're too stupid to figure out that you're not guilty? What? Alright, so that doesn't work. Like my ears, it doesn't work. Yeah, sorry, I'm exceptionally deaf right now, which is really irritating. I mean, it's just that I just can't. Everything's muffled as I'm speaking, and it's just kind of irritating. But anyway, but everything else is going, you know, okay, so I shouldn't complain. I mean, my hair has come back pretty good. I mean, you know, a lot of things that, you know, a lot of things are better, a lot of things are worse, but I'm just saying, you know, generally speaking, it's summer, you know, I have cigarettes. It's just it's just nice. Did I say old fan? Yeah, thank you, old fan. Yeah, old fan. She thinks she sort of owed it to me, but she really didn't, so, but whatever. I'm not going to complain, right? I mean, how can I sit there and impose on her a sense of true understanding when it's not even in my self-interest that she truly understand that she had no obligation, right? I mean, if she truly understood that she had no obligation, then, you know, I wouldn't have the cigarettes, and therefore, see, so there's my empathy has failed a little bit again. Well, that isn't even my empathy, that's just my self-interest. Preservation of my own convenience. So for my own convenience, I allowed a principle to be shamelessly ignored. So, because I got some cigarettes out of the deal. Which, you know, fortunately there's no, it's not like, you know, there's many dead or injured people on, you know, as a consequence of this violation. So it's not like it's a catastrophe, it's a violation. So I guess that's why I'm allowing myself to do it. But still, in principle, wrong. I know that about a lot of things I do. It's like, you know, it's like in the Snake Plissken's video, he used the word faggoty a couple of times, and faggot or something, and you're just saying, yeah, like me, you really should be too smart to have to resort to those kind of errors. I mean, it is a fun word to use, because, you know, when you're using it, you don't have any maliciousness towards gays. You're just using it because it's this great word to insult somebody's masculinity, or to, you know, it's a way of kicking somebody in the balls without kicking them in the balls. You know what I mean? It's a way of hitting somebody you know, in a sensitive spot for a man. And so you use it, but it's, you know, it's something you know is wrong. And like I say, he's smart enough to know, gee, I should kind of weed that out of my stylish persona. But see, it's that whole stylish thing too. See, he's doing a video on sincerity and honesty, and you know, there's something a little bit trivially dishonest about him. Obviously, the whole fake eye injury thing, or well, my fake blindness anyway. The whole fake, I'm a turnip farmer, you know, all the silly fake things he's done. The whole fake story about the girl he was trying to fucking, you know, shag. You know, and he turned that into some sort of, I was doing charity work. You know, come on. You know. But it's just this idea too of his, you know, his hair is like tinted or whatever, you know. I mean, he wants to have blonde hair, but he doesn't really have blonde hair anymore. You know, it's that kind of crisis. And, you know, I sort of understand that crisis, I suppose, just because, you know, you just don't. It's like I had white hair as a kid, but you know, I knew my father had white hair when he was a kid. He didn't stay white. You know, I mean, didn't stay blonde even. So I mean, you know, but whatever. Yeah, well, so I'm just saying, there's a certain insincerity in, you know, in who he's trying to be. You know, he's not something and he wants to be something. And I guess, you know, we all have some of that happening. We all have a self-image, I suppose, that might be different. You know, it's like the Matrix thing. You know, it's like Morpheus in the Matrix who's got the fancy coat and he holds his hands behind his back and he does all kinds of stylish things. You know, and the real Morpheus in the hovel, you know, it's got the ratty clothes. Like, I guess they all, you know, it's kind of funny, right? They have a hovercrafty kind of super ship, and yet nobody can sew a hole in a shirt. They don't have a machine to knit clothing. I mean, they can do all this, put you in a tank and do all this surgery shit on you and fix things, but they can't make a suit of clothes. I mean, it is a little bit, I mean, come on, that's called a plot flaw, right? There's no other word for that, right? That's a plot flaw. And that's like our lives are just full of these lies. You know, what we project on the screen, the story we tell, the narrative, using a Matt word, right? This narrative is just a pile of shit. It doesn't have anything to do with what we really live for, which is to have that chick suck on my balls. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the thing that's keeping us in the game is something crude. And yet people who are in the game for that crude thing will say, it's the love of Christ that keeps me alive. Or, you know, it's the, you know, some bullshit is what they'll be using as defenses for the existence of human beings, when all they're really doing is defending the fact that they have a hope to someday bag Ivanka Trump or something. yeah, she's on my mind lately. I haven't seen her in 20 years, so who the hell knows what she's turned into, but yeah, she was hot. Seems like 20 years anyway. I can't say for sure. It was a long time ago, the last time I saw a picture of Ivanka. the whole contrivance of some sort of silly name, you know, Ivana Ankarized, you know. And, I mean, it's just so Trumpy. Trumpy. That ought to be a word in the dictionary. Trumpy. Right next to frumpy, lumpy, bumpy, stumpy, glumpy, Trumpy. Yeah, fit right in. Anyway, that's a whole different subject too. So anyway, I'll post a link to this. But, you know, he makes some good arguments in here. Links to all kinds of good vegan propaganda sources and whatnot and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a nice disciplined counter argument to stupid things the guy said and blah 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 blah. And So it was a nice little surprise. So I'll post a link to it because it was a good little surprise. All right. So where was I? What else did I want to take care of here? Is there something else? I've been doing this physics thing and Feynman thing, but that's really not a subject. I will read a comment I think on one of the videos just because it's relates to this idea of disagreement and hostility. Because the comment's just more hostile than it needs to be. Yeah, it's just so little happening. No one saying anything. I'm sure there was something. Sorry, I just had a vitamin pill. Give me the hiccups. It was big. Well, it wasn't really vitamin. It was just silica or something. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, I thought there was some other thing, some other video or something I wanted to mention, but I'm not really recalling it. So I'll just pretend I don't have that. So I don't have that. Whatever the extra thing was I wanted, that was sort of just relevant to this whole honesty and this whole, having an honest conversation and trying to keep it within some kind of boundaries and and I have to concede I have too little patience with people. I don't know whether I have an excuse for that or not. I don't know whether the excuse, like in war, you know what I mean, when you can become shell-shocked and trigger-happy and insane because you've been in a fucking, foxhole for 3 years and it's just totally gotten on your nerves. And so maybe there's part of my life is I have a persecution complex or something, or a terribly defensive triggers. I spent my whole life defending my life, defending being neurotic, defending being a lot of things, and people can never understand these things. And it's just so irritating to have ununderstandable circumstances, circumstances that are so, they're just as real as a solid frickin' steel wall to you, and they're completely invisible to other people, and you're just like, how can you not see the steel blade, stuck in my head? How can you not see this frickin' huge knife that's stuck in my head? And so you're just sick of the bullshit. So anyway, I just thought this thread was just sort of interesting because it's just this, this rhetoric is so bad and these arguments are so excessive, and you're just like, what the fuck? So anyway, some guy makes a trivial comment. Richard Feynman disabled the comments in a will saying I'm right, enough said. And it was just kind of silly just because Feynman's dead. He didn't turn comments off on the video. And so I posted a comment saying, Richard Feynman is long dead. Although I think he was a bit of an arrogant jerk, I think he would have supported an internet that actively argued physics. So I thought that was me being a little bit gracious and just conceding, look, I don't like Feynman for some reasons. I liked him personally. I like his personality, which is ironic based on the comments this guy made. But yeah, I don't like his approach. I like his theory of thought, but his practice is not his theory. I guess that's part of what I'm arguing, is I don't think he practiced what he preached. I think he was a lot more closed-minded than he would have liked to have been, as I'm more of a reactionary than I would like to be, or something like that. He just wasn't as good as his rhetoric on the subject of doing science in some sort of meaningful way, and just little trivial things too, but some of it was kind of trivial because he used this separation of philosophy from science, and I think that was a huge mistake to think that philosophy isn't science, because it is. It's the science when you don't have hard evidence and you have to use soft evidence, and theoretical physicists are philosophers, because in a lot of ways they are deducing things based on soft evidence, not hard evidence. And he didn't seem to appreciate how soft the evidence was for the hard science he was building on it. No, I don't think that's an adequate way of explaining it. If you understood what I just said. If you didn't understand it, then it just sounded like crap. So I don't want to waste too much time explaining it. See, that's the other thing you're caught up in trying to be yourself. You're saying, well, I should be able to use some words and some sentences and some vocabulary, and it really shouldn't go over their heads, but it will sometimes. And sometimes it doesn't go over their head just because certain words aren't quite the word you understand to be the meaning of that word, and so that's why it goes past you. And it's just irritating that. But you really just can't get into the minutia of explaining every sentence, what you mean by every word in every sentence, or qualifying each word. You just can't get into all that shit. Anyway, so this John Sock guy, fuck you. I mean, terrible name, right? Since you dismiss him based on his personality, well, see there, I don't dismiss him based on his personality. It's just a bullshit accusation to make. I dismiss him based on the fact that, and I don't dismiss him, I devalue in some real way the integrity of his theory based on the fact that I don't think it is as rigorous. He hasn't acquired enough evidence for the conviction. His level of conviction and confidence is higher than the evidence would merit. That's the mistake I'm critiquing. And the simple fact that you can't argue physics like it was philosophy. Well, again, he's arguing like it's philosophy. He's doing that. I mean, this idea that, okay, he's saying photons are a particle. He believes they're particles. And yet, okay, he's saying this wave thing happens. But he doesn't provide any explanation. And so I'm just saying that sounds like philosophy. I mean, that sounds like something you're not basing it on some confirming experiment. You're just basing it on the fact that you like the way it sounds. You're comfortable with some idea of photons just being in some kind of floaty position, and they just float their way okay, into a determination of where they're going. And that that isn't fundamentally incoherent with how coherent the universe is. I mean, on its face, that should sound wrong just because if there's that much chaos, true chaos, in the system, then the system wouldn't end up being as rigid as it appears to be when all of these effects are manifest into planet Earth. Anyway, I highly doubt your baseless speculation. So it's not, first of all, it's not baseless. So what's with this excessive rhetoric? It's clearly based speculation. The point is that I didn't know it at the time, but the original idea of particle gravity is 300 fucking years old. It wasn't baseless then. It's not baseless now. About his opinion is correct. So it's not baseless speculation. I'm making accusations, a clear accusation in the video I've made about Feynman saying that the single slit produces this pattern. It doesn't. It produces a diffraction pattern. I've made a clear accusation that he was incorrect. Now, it's not baseless speculation. It's proven. It's a provably, defendably, I mean an evidence-based, a defendable by evidence accusation. The evidence is you will not create a single slit the size of the slit Feynman was pointing to that will not create diffraction. It will. You can't avoid, as Feynman even says in the video, you can't avoid diffraction. Anyway, just like your so-called unified hypothesis, uh, I don't call it a unified hypothesis. I don't know why you put that in quotes. It's not my so-called. That's what you've so-called it. Not a theory, like you say, just a pre-scientific hypothesis, a pre-scientific. I mean, it's just, these are all your rhetoric. Again, these are all your labels. You're saying it has no scientific value to sit there and say, here, I have a explanation that finds the same pattern, the inverse square rule of gravity, affecting electricity and magnetism. And here I have an explanation why those things are connected. And they're connected because they are, in fact, the same force. On its face, that's not unscientific as a thought process. And the only thing that would make it unscientific is if I was denying some fact that made it impossible. And what I have done, in fact, is taken Richard Feynman's objections to such a theory and explained why his objections don't apply to a truly kinetic gravity. So if you understand gravity to be a force behaving kinetically, in which there is no momentum exchanged, there's just direction exchanged, then, like I said, to call that not scientific or pre-scientific, in my opinion, is nonsense. I mean, that's just an outrageously stupid way to describe what science is made out of, which is you have to come up with, it's like evolution. You have to develop the idea. It occurs to you, well, here's nature. It occurs to me there's a similarity between certain organisms. It now occurs to me that there's fossils in the ground. It occurs to me that it's been a long time there's been organisms living on Earth. And I can put these facts together and hypothesize that, well, maybe the explanation is that these organisms are, in fact, related to each other. That their DNA lineage has nodes of similarity, of source. Anyway, baseless assertion. Again, baseless, how is it baseless? I'm defending it. The accusations I've made, I've defended with evidence of why the accusation is viable. And my counter theories, again, are there to be debunked by some sort of explanation for why it can't work that way. So if I assert, and there's certainly lots of predictions and lots of where there's the possibility of creating such evidence. I'm saying velocity is absolute. I'm saying the atoms have a metabolism. I'm saying lots of things. I'm saying redshift is created by the very fact that the photon is not a single entity, that it is in fact two half of photons, and it is the fact that you're dropping those photons, those halves, as you're moving. And so if you're moving very quickly, you'll drop the halves, and in between the time you drop the two halves, there'll be a longer distance of separation, because now you're dropping the halves as you're moving, and so the halves will be separated. And that creates the red and blue shift. These aren't baseless. Speculative nonsense. Well, again, you can say it's nonsense, but you're not demonstrating with any evidence of why it's nonsense. So is the theory of evolution nonsense? If 200 years ago I said, gee, there's a great deal of similarity between mammals. They all have the same organs, basically. Some of them are vestigial. You know, the porpoise still has hip bones. You know, I could say something like that. Now, is that speculative nonsense? Because I'm taking the facts, I'm adding them up, and I'm saying something, this is what they add up to. Total garbage. And so what are you demonstrating? How are you demonstrating it to be total garbage? How are you disproving or making the incredibility viewable or seeable? You're saying it's incredible nonsense. You're saying this is total garbage. you should be able to make the odor of total garbage smellable. Well, where's the odor of the garbage? Where's the evidence of the garbage? And before you tell me to provide my own hypothesis, well, I wouldn't tell you to do that. What I would say is just counter-argue why what I'm saying can't be the truth. What circumstantial or factual piece of evidence, what experiment proves me wrong, creates a burden that I have to overcome. And I would argue that I am overcoming these burdens. I think I've overcome a substantial one in the two-slit experiment, and I think I can do it also with up and down spin of electrons, and I think I've done it with the Newton glass. So I think in many ways I have met this burden that you're claiming you don't have an obligation to meet, that you can just discount what I'm saying without any counter-argument to any specific statement I've made. Not one specific detail are you arguing here. You're just generally saying, I say it's shit because I say so. That's all you're saying. The burden is on you to demonstrate first that yours is correct by experimental testing. Well, again, I can only use the same experiments that they're using. And it's the interpretation of those experiments. So again, to even argue that all of physics agrees, they don't. Only a third of physicists accept Copenhagen. Another third thinks it's many worlds. Another third thinks some other crack shit, insane, stupid shit. So they don't even understand or agree on what the truth is here, or what the experiment is saying. But yeah, I'm working on it. I'm trying to find these experiments. I'm trying to find the experiment that will decisively demonstrate these truths. And I'm saying aimed photons would be one way to get around this. In the two-slit experiment, that I'm saying you will create the same diffraction pattern, even though, and you will have knowledge of exactly what the trajectory of each photon was, and you'll have the same diffraction pattern. So that's a provable thing. I just don't have the equipment to do it. But you can't say, but you can't, so I will listen to those who can. Well, again, you're saying they can, but they haven't. They've never even seen a quark. They say they exist, but they've never really seen one. I'm just saying there's a ton of this theoretical physics, and this is theoretical physics, that doesn't have much to base itself on. And so for you to argue that they have a ton of experimental evidence that proves what they're saying, it doesn't. The fact that there is a pattern does not prove wave interference. There's lots of things that will create a bar pattern. The only thing that creates bar patterns is not wave interference. So again, fuck you. Alright, well, anyway, so I said experimental testing, like lying about the single slit diffraction and making up crap about unviewed detections. So I was just pointing out that their experimental testing is not very deep. They don't have a lot of deep testing to prove any of these claims about what photons are doing and electrons. Alright, so here he comes back with, nice combo there, you strawmanned my post. How the fuck did I do that? Using your ad hominem of all physicists being liars. First off, I didn't say all physicists are liars. I just said that there is a lot of physics that's based on this lie of that single slit diffraction isn't taking place. When they're talking about the two-slit experiment, they always seem to just say, I mean, look, I can only go by what is out there, okay? The most viewed physics video on YouTube is the Dr. Quantum video. That doesn't acknowledge single slit diffraction, and it describes the detector experiment that I can't ever find a source for. There's no source for this experiment ever having taken place. There's no evidence that it ever took place. no available evidence that it ever took place. So that's the most viewed physics video. Then there's a whole bunch of videos with very prestigious physicists describing the two-slit experiment, where they describe let's close one of the slits and it's just a blob of light. They just describe it as a blob. They don't acknowledge that there's a diffraction pattern when you cover one of the slits. There's single slit diffraction. I'm just saying, it's out there. I think it's a completely fair description of what's out there. You're saying it's an unfair description, that most two-slit experiment descriptions accurately acknowledge single-slit diffraction? I'm saying that's a refutable claim on your part. I'm saying 95% of descriptions of the two-slit experiment will misrepresent the fact that there is single-slit diffraction when you cover one of the slits. That's my claim. And I'm just saying, if you're saying I'm wrong, you should be able to demonstrate to me some evidence of a whole bunch of these descriptions of the double slit experiment where they acknowledge that there is diffraction when you cover one of the slits. All right. That you can't prove. Just calling it magic or silly doesn't refute their work. That's not all I see. Again, why are you saying things like this? Is this what I mean by, is this sincerely how you argue? Do you think I've just done that? I've just called it something and that's it. I made a 2-minute video just ragging on it. I didn't make extensively long videos explaining exactly why I think something's wrong. I haven't extensively explained my criticisms. So I've just said it's magic and it's silly and it's stupid, therefore don't believe it. That's all I've done. I mean, you can't see how that's just such an insulting misrepresentation of reality. Why are you molesting the truth this way? Either way, whatever you think of their experiments is completely irrelevant. I don't think they would think that. And I don't think anybody who's seriously cares about getting the answer right would ever say that. With regard to you doing practical work based on your pre-scientific hypothesis. Well, again, I don't know what practical work means, but I think I've certainly done a ton of practical work. I think the fact that I have described a circumstance in the two-slit experiment that I don't think I've seen it ever described this way, that the real fundamental difference between the single slit and the double slit is the fact that this middle light goes right next to the surfaces in the double slit. I think that observation is meaningful, substantive, unique, valuable. You're saying it's nothing. It's not practical. It's not a sensible addition to scientific knowledge to understand that distinction. That's a fundamental difference between the single slit and the double slit. It's not meaningful. Because you say so? Even if you could develop into a scientific theory without the ability to use it to predict future observations, it's useless. Well, again, I've made a ton of statements about predicting. I've predicted that you'll never get matter to move the speed of light, ever. And nothing even close to the speed of light. That it's not as matter. It will be energy. If you propel something that speed, it will no longer be matter. It will be energy. I made a lot of predictions about the end of the universe, whether there's gravity, the fact that I'm saying there may be no gravity at the end of the universe. That's why things are moving very fast. These are observations that can be confirmed. I've made a prediction that there is no gravitational lensing. That it's not gravity that's bending light. That it's surface fields of particulates that's causing the lensing. It's diffraction, again, not gravity. These are things that likely can be with future experiments confirmed. I think some of them are looking quite feasible in the sense that they're finding out they have a lot of problems with Einstein's math in using lensing, because lensing implies an amount of gravity that they can't see the source of.